No.
13.
Yeah. A lot of people may be doing circle stuff.
Yeah.
All right, good morning, everyone. This is our fifth class of this session, or the fifth session of this class. Let me share my screen.
Care for God's creation.
And so we're today we're going to have our class topic is climate change is a threat multiplier. You're going to hear a lot of similar topics we talked about. It's just a little, we can go more in detail, like what I said on the very first class or session we had, that, you know, it's how we pinpoint our topics. And this one's probably a bit more broader than we've had. So it's, or a little bit, also a rehash a little bit, but just a reminder. So next week will be our last class in this format. Then on the 27th, we're having a guest speaker, Dr. Cynthia Mo Lobetta. And then on March 6th, we'll have Sound Salmon Solutions supporting us, talking about what they're doing in the local community.
Are we having class on the 27th? I thought that was the drive-through at church.
It is, but that's only from 9:30 to 10:30, and this class starts at 10:45. And I'll talk about that afterwards. There's some logistics issues. We may bump the class another 15 minutes or so, but we'll talk about that here later today. All right, so today's Bible scripture is from John 13, verses 34 through 35. I give you a new commandment, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you also should love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another. So that will break up to our first video of the day. We'll have 3 today, short ones.
Catherine, it goes without saying that these are very trying times we're living through. Some people might suggest there are more important issues for us to be thinking about right now. So how do we ensure that care for creation and climate change remain not only on the agenda, but high up the agenda?
This is a really good question, because often people will say, sure, I care about this issue, but this isn't the most important issue right now. What I want to do is I want to remind us of that image of the leaky bucket. Do we care about climate change because of itself, because of its impact on, 1 or 2 or 3 degree warming in the average temperature of the planet? No, we care about climate change because it affects everything else that we already care about today. The reason we care about climate change is because it is a threat multiplier. So when people say, well, I'm busy worrying about this, all you have to do is just connect the dots, say yes, and this is affected by climate change. And that's why we have to not only fill the bucket, but patch the hole in the bucket too. The solution is not to deny the reality of the problem, and the solution is not to deny the efficacy of the solutions. The solution is to recognize that to care about the health of our planet, the health of the human race, the health of our family, our friends, our loved ones, our community, our country, we only have to be one thing, and that is a human being who lives on this planet. And furthermore, as Christ followers, we already care about people. We have been given a new heart, and that new heart has God's love poured out in it to love others as we ourselves have been loved. So what is the true solution to climate change? It's a solution that will help fix poverty and hunger, lack of access to resources and jobs at the same time. We have to figure out how to get our energy from clean ways, how to stop wasting so much energy, how to alter our behaviors in some ways. But the bottom line, as this cartoon says, which I love, is what if this whole thing is a big hoax and we create a better world for nothing? What if we end up with energy independence and sustainability, green jobs, livable cities, clean air, water, and healthy children? These are the consequences of acting on climate. The truth is that the planet's health is our health, and climate action is action for the health of the planet and the human race. The coronavirus pandemic has showed us how interrelated they are. Both climate change and the pandemic threaten the health and the safety of our family, our friends, our loved ones, and our communities. Both of them affect the economy, resource availability, national security, and more. Both of them disproportionately affect the sick, the very young and old, the poorest and most vulnerable, both here and abroad. Both of them are threat multipliers. And when it comes down to it, we care about the coronavirus pandemic, we care about climate change, and we care about all of these other issues for exactly the same reasons. We care about them because they affect the people, the things, the places that we love.
All right, so that was our first video of the day. Oops, yeah, here's our first question of the day. Do you see the coronavirus pandemic and climate change as an equal threat to our health, the planet, and those in poverty? Go ahead and unmute. I'll stop sharing and go ahead and unmute yourself.
No, absolutely not. I think the threat of climate change is much greater than the pandemic, that we're going to see much more death and chaos because of climate change.
Yeah, I tend to agree as well. I mean, it's just the thing that this whole topic is about is that, you know, you have so many different issues around the world, and this global pandemic and what we've done over the years or decades of fossil fuels and pollution and having global heat rising of the earth. And so, yeah, climate is worse, but it just adds to the conflict. Dennis, you were about to say something?
Well, I was just thinking that I don't think they're the same, but I think that they've challenged us in similar ways in terms of how we approach seemingly intractable problems, or if the solution is going to make us unpleasant or be unpleasant or uncomfortable, or it's going to cost us money, then I think what's been exposed is that a lot of us just decide to deny it. And that's a more defensible position for some people. And I think that's what's so difficult about climate change, is that it's not as obvious to everybody as it seems to be to those of us that are actually participating in dialogue about it.
Yep. Yeah, for me, they're just, it's, you know, the world population, we always look at what is immediate threat. And like we've been talking about the last few classes, is that, you know, sometimes we don't, you know, if you're living in one part of the world and the other part of the world is being affected a much more, worse situation, it's, you know, it's that mentally trying to think that it doesn't bother me. I don't need to think about it. Obviously, the pandemic is affecting everybody, but the climate change is obviously, we've been talking about this over and over again. It does affect everybody. Go ahead, Phyllis.
I think that the pandemic and climate change are closely related when a person is, I want to say, smacked in the face with it. Just like someone in your family died from the coronavirus. Because then if you don't know anybody that's happened to, then you're, oh, well, you know, it's all, you know, it's not the reality of it. In the same way with climate, you know, if there was a hurricane or a flood or whatever, that would make us think a little more about climate change. So I think that, you know, we're to the point where a lot of people, I won't say most, but a lot of people have to have it right in their face before they really think about it.
Yeah, so, and the only way to really change that is just like what Dr. Katharine Hayhoe has been saying, is to talk about it. we keep talking about it. We're not going to solve world peace in these conversations, but it's that growing conversation and awareness, and being an advocate as well. Anybody else?
Yeah, I wish both of those things, the COVID pandemic as well as climate change, could be decoupled from politics.
Yeah.
Like have a better chance of getting ahead in both those areas.
Good luck with that. That's
Giving you
those are connected at the hip bone.
Exactly.
A common thing on both of these is it's a worldwide emergency. The immediacy of COVID is in the last, 2.5 years, it has struck it.
Yeah.
And the world has had to step up and recognize it. It's opened channels of communication around the world, made awareness around the world. Maybe that's a lead into cooperation to solve the climate change problems. It's not going to be done overnight. It's going to take years. It's gone so far that it's not an easy answer, but with the advances in science that are coming and are here now, it's going to be a lot easier than what it would have been 10 years ago.
Marco, you talked a little bit about population. And I remember 20 years ago, the big topic was population explosion and how it affected the world. And as more people are born in this world, climate change obviously is changing too because of that. So population is a big issue too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's basically, more people you have, more people consume, and consumption of everything we use in life, in energy, gas, fuel, and food. We talked about, cows and was it palm oil that talked about a couple of weeks ago, but all that agriculture is based on the world population. There's a need for it. Business is all about there's a need for something, and we end up tearing up the environment because of that.
Well, just interesting, as I move around Everett, Snohomish County, in this area, it's incredible all the building that is going on, and the new apartments and up and high rises and all that. And it's just like, where are all these people coming from?
Mm-hmm. Well, a problem and a good problem is that there's a lot of jobs out here and high paying jobs as well. So it's, people migrate. There's always a migration of, it's not just from country to country, but it's within the United States, there's migration of what kind of industries are booming, and people move to those, to have a better quality of life.
I agree with you, Marco. It's about supply and demand. If you have the jobs here, you're going to be attracting hopefully talented people into the area to fulfill those jobs, and we can keep them at a decent wage. Instead of minimum wage jobs, we have jobs out here that require skill, and therefore, you're going to be compensated accordingly.
Yeah, and that, if you bring in a lot of high-skilled, high-paid jobs, you're still going to bring in require our lower income jobs.
Well,
to support
it goes
that.
hand in hand. You have to have one to have the other. There's going to always be somebody that, sweeps the floor. You always have to have somebody that's going to paint the building. You're always going to have somebody to do those type of jobs. Not everybody can be a scientist or an engineer, but these people who supply these services, such as maintenance and things, they are worth their weight in gold. I mean, it needed to be a balanced society.
Yeah, I mean, but let's not kid ourselves. People are moving here for a reason because the mindset of the people that live here, whether it was the people that occupy the land because of the resources or because of the opportunities, whether it's the Klondike, whether it's aerospace or even the Navy shipbuilding, and all these people are moving here now, for a while software, now maybe they call it cloud, telecom was one also for a while. So we know people are going to keep coming here, right? So why do people kind of complain? It's like, well, we know people are going to come and boom here because economics just boom like crazy here. If you look at the number of companies that are, top in their field, I'll start with Nordstrom and Starbucks and then Costco, and then you even talk about Boeing, T-Mobile, Microsoft, and Amazon. It's a mindset of people that are attracted out here. So you do need that base infrastructure and all, but then maybe we need to think about, well, we're going to see another boom here. I mean, it's pretty easy to look at the booms and cycles every maybe 10 or 15 years. People come out here because there's desirable jobs, there's desirable mindsets of people that are working out here and progressive economics and arguably progressive politics. So it's going to boom again. So does it mean that we have to think about having it distributed throughout the region? They talk a lot about Tacoma and Everett as these outposts for Seattle. Do we need to have them connected better with internet, to have them connected better with light rail transportation or urban air mobility? But it's going to expand. So it's the job that not a lot of people don't like talking about, and it's very unwelcome. Some people say it's one of the highest suicide rates is the urban planner. Is the urban and regional planner is the one that knows all the history and has to think about things, but they have no money, right? It's the developers and all. So I don't think we need to kid ourselves that we're not going to go through this again because it's happened twice in the time I've lived here in 15 years, these booms and these real estate booms and all. So how do we deal with it? It's a reality. We have a great place. We have smart people. More people are going to move out here. So then what do we do to make sure that we've got a baseline of how to support everybody that is coming out here?
Well, the economy has always been very cyclical. It's going to have its highs and lows. I mean, that's what drives it.
But I'm talking about this region specifically. Why isn't Chicago, Illinois booming? It's been going down. That's where I grew up.
Well, I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, Santa Clara. And what is that? That was the chip processing plant. And that place boomed. So did real estate. All of a sudden, you're
going back to the Klondike time.
Yeah. $500,000.
It's going to keep going up, and it's going to keep going up, and it's keep going to go up, just like it is up here in Seattle, right? I mean, I'm specifically speaking here, the Klondike. I mean, that was way before all that, right? I mean, cedar and salmon is what we learned why the native people here thrived, because we have natural resources, right? Sure. Then we have intellectual resources now, and then we've got this mindset of people that grow up with vision, and whether some people say it was the whole the World's Fair that motivated Paul Allen and Microsoft, right, and to boom up. But we're gonna have another boom. I mean, who would have thought 10 years ago Amazon would have this many people working out here?
Yeah.
And it's a great place to live here. At the same time, we have to be open to this change. It's like some people, I moved out here when I was in my mid-30s thinking, oh, this is great. This is how it's going to be forever. No, it's going to continue to do that. And, there'll be a time when I want to move further and further away from stuff. So,
well, it's like anything else, as things grow, to be able to control it somewhat. It's like inflation. Controlled inflation is a very good thing. Inflation out of control is a bad thing. So it's just like the population. I mean, if it is absorbed in and just not dumped on you, it is a good thing.
Yeah. So to keep this conversation geared towards climate change, I think the next thing is really, is it bad that we're having an economic boom? Is it bad that people want to come here? The key is how do you build economically or sustainable that, does everybody need a 2-acre piece of property, big backyard, big house for, a family of 3 or 4, other countries, when I was living in Korea for a year and there is no land to be played with. So everything goes up, and that's where you start looking at these urban populations is how do we build?
Yeah.
So I always think there's opportunity when there's change, if we look hard enough. And so The reality is we're going to have booms and we're going to grow, and technology is probably going to lead the way. And I would kind of push back a little bit that we're always going to have the floor sweepers and stuff. I don't think we will. I think that AI is going to change a lot of the service industry. So what is the opportunity? The opportunity is to use that to maybe find ways to reduce our footprint, our carbon footprint. Maybe we don't have 40-hour work weeks. Maybe we don't have office buildings and skyscrapers that house people. You know, maybe there's ways to change our whole concept of what we think, you know, a working life ought to be. How many years do you work? What's the public, does the public have any responsibility for those that are at the lower end of the chain? And how do we make their lives better and their footprint reduced as well? So, you know, you talk about urban planning, that's a perfect opportunity. So what do we want the new houses to look like? What kind of green spaces come with that? Those are things that get legislated and determined through your elected officials. And so I think we ought to raise our voice about what our vision should be for as that time approaches.
Yeah, definitely. You know, we talked about, you know, talking to our politicians and, you know, just like, you know, changing building codes, make sure they are, you know, they don't get stagnant with the material and technology that, you know, whatever we're building, it's, you know, it's that carbon footprint is reduced. Mark, you ever say something?
Yeah, when I was I was working in Sweden, in Stockholm, and you can build any kind of building you want in Stockholm as long as it's 7 stories tall and fits in with all the other buildings.
Helsinki is the same way.
I guess,
think about Japan and how they live.
I guess why we're talking about this subject at all is we're talking with regards to basically our grandkids and future generations. That's what we're trying to actually try to promote and help in terms of what kind of lives they're going to live. And we've had the opportunity, at least if we've lived in this particular area a long time, we've had the beauty of the Northwest. But of course, that's changing, and you can see it was an easy drive to Seattle or to Bellingham, but it isn't anymore. And so things will be changing, and you mentioned mass transit and that kind of thing, but it's kind of, we're looking at the future for future generations, I think, is what we're a lot talking about here.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of my thoughts on that is, I think it's really been proven that people, unless they get gratification, the more delayed it is, the more unlikely they are to participate. And a lot of us are at a stage where, well, we could put solar panels on, but the investment I would have to make is not going to be for me, but it's my money that I'm putting in it. So it's a decision there. Am I going to do something for someone that's 2 generations away and spend, you know, what I have to spend on something that I'm not going to reap the benefits? And that's what the bottom line is, I think, a lot of times for people, and that's what keeps them from really buying into the whole idea of what you can do for climate change.
Good point.
And I don't know how to change that sort of mental feeling or attitude that most people do have. That I'm not good. Go ahead.
We just build in, I mean, I think we need to find incentives. You need to look at your tax basis, and you need to look at public utilities and make it pay for you to actually do things that are going to serve not only you well, but the public well, and probably reduce profits, but you know, expand. You know, solar panels, I think, is a good example of that. Other countries are doing that, and they're making it work. We haven't embraced that.
You know, I would like to jump in a little bit here and agree with Mark, and also disagree with that we're just looking at future generations. We can do something immediately. It's not that complicated. We know what the answers are into climate change. All we have to do is do it. Look, the pandemic hit Los Angeles. All the cars stopped on the freeway, and in a matter of 2 or 3 days, the air quality improved about 100%. In a matter of 3 or 4 days. Come on, folks. We know what has to be done. Why don't we do it? And when we can do it now, we don't have to wait for our kids or our grandkids to do it. We need to set the example and get our duffs going and get this thing done. And in politics, we've got to throw that out. Love one another. That's what the lady was just talking about. We have to look at each other and say, I love my brother and sisters, and I want them to have a quality life. They have to have drinking water. They can't be flooded. They can't be in drought. We know what has to be done. Let's get our butts up and do it.
Lee, I think what I was trying to say is not letting our grandkids and kids take it over. I'm saying we need to do that for them. And that's why
I agree.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
I'm not saying they can do it. I'm just saying that we should consider some of these things on their behalf.
I mean, there's reason to be optimistic. I lived there 15 years, and I've been a transit junkie since the late 80s, early 90s. I worked on a train and all. And in that lifetime, Los Angeles has a train. You know, I mean, Seattle, we've got trains and light rails going everywhere, right? I mean, there's people in the 90s that movie Singles to just kind of poo-poo the whole thing about mass transit in the area. But everyone says, it's like, well, when there was a big subway build out? They talk about Buenos Aires and Paris. These are hundreds of year old types of systems. And like, oh, you'll never get one. There's that long stretch of period. But, you know, in our lifetime, we've done it, right? We don't have leaded cars anymore. And arguably, my kids are 14. Maybe by their time when they're fully driving, you know, majority of cars will be electric cars. And by the time that they have children, nobody will have a fuel, at least consumer wise, a non-electric car. So there has been a lot of progress. And, you know, the climate change movement is one thing. And I remember in the early 90s, it was, you know, think globally and, global warming, whatever else. So it's never going to go away. It's going to cyclically keep coming in. And the projects to realize, you know, we want, like you said, about instant gratification it's a 2, 3, 4, if not 10-year project to get through, but they actually did something, right? And, you know, Linwood and downtown Bellevue, they're going to be running train. I think they did run train to Bellevue for testing, right? And it's going to be amazing seeing train go across the I-90 bridge. And that's progress. So it's people are doing the park. So there's stuff to be optimistic about, but the job is never done, of course.
Yeah, I'm actually looking forward to Linwood station open up so I can just drive down to Linwood from Mukilteo and go see sporting events. So don't have to worry about traffic. All right, so we're about halfway through. Let me go ahead and start our second video. Go ahead and mute yourself. And this one's a little bit longer than the first one, but it's another good one. So let me share my screen.
A few degrees is no big deal. Outside, temperature can go up and down by that much in a single hour, right? So why are scientists so worked up about such a little change? It's true, a degree or two does not sound like a lot of global warming. So when we hear that the Paris Agreement wants to limit warming below 2 degrees Celsius, or that the latest report from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or the IPCC, says that the impacts will be very serious even past 1.5 degrees, it just doesn't compute for most of us. In our lives, over the course of a single day, temperature goes up and down all the time, by a lot more than 1 or 2 degrees. So what's the big deal? Here's the difference. We aren't talking about the temperature of a certain place at a certain time. We are talking about the long-term average temperature of the entire planet, which over human timescales is as stable as that of the human body. Think about your body. It's pretty warm to begin with, 37 degrees Celsius or 98 Fahrenheit. Then imagine it goes up 1 degree Celsius or nearly 2 degrees Fahrenheit. as the temperature of the Earth already has. That's worrisome. It's not normal. You start to feel it. You're overheated, achy, tired. You go to the doctor. The doctor says, yes, you are running a fever. And it's not just some illness you picked up somewhere. No, your doctor says, and they add they've consulted with nearly every other doctor in the world, and they agree too. This fever is the result of your lifestyle choices. This is exactly what's happening with the Earth. We are running a fever. And as we talk about in the Global Weirding episode on natural cycles, none of the usual suspects are responsible this time. It's not the sun, it's not volcanoes, and it's not the Earth's orbit. It's our lifestyle choices. Specifically, burning coal and gas and oil, that's about 3/4 of the problem. And the other quarter is deforestation and agriculture. To change the temperature of the planet by a full degree, it takes a lot of energy. And that's why we scientists don't only use degrees, we also use joules. A joule is a measure of energy. It takes 1 joule to lift an apple about 3 feet in the air. You can thank Isaac Newton for that. So how many extra joules worth of energy has the planet accumulated thanks to our lifestyle choices and all the fossil fuels that we've burned? More than 250 sextillion or zettajoules. That is 21 extra zeros. And that number is climbing at a rate of 4 Hiroshima bombs worth of energy per second. Let that sink in. So you can see why this fever is worrying and why even past 1.5 degrees Celsius or 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit, the impacts are serious. Nearly every way that climate change affects us scales to some degree with global temperature. Average precipitation in some regions doesn't, and we don't know enough yet about severe weather events like tornadoes and hail to say for sure how they're changing. But just about everything else, heat waves, heavy precipitation events, the area burned by wildfire, coastal flooding, even economic costs. All of those tick up as the mercury rises. So the more carbon we produce, the greater the temperature change that we'll see, and the greater the damages. Just like the impacts of a prolonged high fever on the human body. Let's look at economic costs first. If the world warms by 2 degrees, the average GDP of many poor countries would drop by 5 to 10%. If the world warmed by 4 degrees, it would be more like 10 to 25%, with a global average around 20%. In the US, many regions, particularly the Southeast and the South Central region, could see drops of up to 20% in their GDP as well. How about human lives? Burning fossil fuels is already responsible for air pollution that kills over 4 million people around the world every year, 200,000 of those in the United States alone. But warmer temperatures make that pollution worse. It's estimated that if the world warms by 2 degrees rather than 1.5, that would mean an additional 150 million deaths just due to air pollution alone. The difference between a warming of 1 or 2 or 3 degrees or more is laid out in detail in a few key resources. First, there's a report by the National Academy of Sciences called Climate Stabilization Targets. In this report, which I co-authored along with other scientists, we found that per degree of warming, we expect a 3 to 10% increase in the amount of rain falling in the heaviest events, a 5 to 15% reduction in the yields of major crops, and a 200 to 400% increase in the area burned by wildfire across the western US. And as we talk about in our Global Weirding episode on climate impacts in the Southwest, the area burned by wildfires today has already almost doubled since the 1980s due to a changing climate. Then there's the 2018 IPCC report that looks at the difference between a 1.5 and a 2 degree world. It highlights not only the risks that increase with temperature, but also which ones we'd see a significant difference in, even between 1.5 and 2 degrees. These include average and extreme temperatures, sea level rise, extreme rainfall, and drought risk for some regions. It's estimated that biodiversity loss could double under an additional 0.5 degree of warming, and there would be increased risk of permafrost thaw in the Arctic, as well as ocean acidification around the world. In terms of human impacts, if warming can be limited to 1.5 instead of 2 degrees, this could mean 50% fewer people exposed to water stress and lower risks to health, food security, and economic growth. That's a huge difference we're talking about for just 0.5 degree Celsius or 0.9 degrees Fahrenheit of global warming. So how do we connect the dots between global change and what it means right here in the places where we live? That's actually what I do. I do that by combining real-world data with climate model outputs and using that to calculate how our lives will be affected as the world warms by 1 or 2 degrees or more. We calculate the impacts on things that matter to us, like corn yields in Iowa under a 1 versus a 2 or 3 degree warming scenario. How often a record-breaking hot summer, like the one we saw in Texas in 2011, would recur as the world warms by 1 or 2 degrees. Or how the water supply for a city or a water district or a state would be threatened as the world warms by 2 or 4 degrees. Why do I do this? Because in order to understand why another degree of warming is such a big deal, we can't rely on our own experience of temperature. None of us has ever experienced such a big change in global average temperature, and especially not one that's happening so fast. As far back as we can go in the history of human civilization on this planet, we have never lived through such a large and a rapid change. It truly is unprecedented. And our food, our water, our energy, our infrastructure, and our economic systems are not built or prepared to cope with it. So next time someone scoffs, 2 degrees, that's nothing. Tell them, no, it is a lot. It is more than enough to tell us that our planet is running a fever. It's real, it's us, and it's not just serious. It's time to fix it before it's too late.
Excuse me. So our second question for the day is, why do you think tackling climate change is not a priority for many Christians, and do you think you can do more to change that? So we talked in the last video, she talked about that 1 degree change. And it's that, I keep going back towards that idea that, oh, 1 degree is nothing, but that's what she does for a living. And she, it shows she's presenting the models and the data and things that have changed in the past decade or so, that that 1 degree does affect everything. Go ahead, Karen.
That was really frightening to hear that last segment. To have it put that way and so dramatically. Wow.
Karen, you go ahead, unmute yourself first. You're still muted. Oh, Karen, you're still muted.
As a Christian, we love everyone, and I'm surprised that all the world doesn't know what's happening. When you turn on TV, listen to the radio, whatever, you can see that climate change is making an effect on people in many parts of the world. And we are a global society, and we just have to take care of ourselves and others if we are Christians that love others.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well said.
Thank you.
Anybody else regarding the last video or any other comments from our previous conversation?
Do we think Christians see the climate change issue any different than non-Christians?
Why would they?
Well, I think there's some that they're constantly focused on the rapture and the end of the world and Christ returning, and they're looking forward to that. which would be a good thing. And they're like, oh, and that's going to happen soon. And so why are we worrying about all this other stuff?
True.
It's been happening soon for 2,000 years.
Yes. There you go. Perfect.
So maybe the question is whether the Christians, how the Christians need to find our voice, so that it impacts others and our own community, but also others. I mean, this is the first time in my church experience that we've ever been a part of even discussions like this. So good for you, Marco, but I think this is an outlier.
Yep, that's true.
I don't know if, how many were able to watch, Jim, I'll get to you real quick. How many were able to watch the YouTube worship this morning? But, even in our prayers, we're talking about climate change. And that's what we gotta keep doing, keep talking about, bring the awareness. So that if someone asks you, you've gone through this, you'll by the time we're done, you'll go through 8 sessions. You can at least say, what is climate change? And what does it mean to you, to your family, to the local community, to the state, to the country, and to the world? Jim, go ahead.
Me?
Or Jim Harvey.
Oh, sorry.
I think that there's so much going on today that is about to explode, and both good and bad. Science is, Tim has an electric car. He's had one for several years. So he's kind of leading the way, towards cleaning up the atmosphere. And there's been changes that are making huge inroads. I talked about the metal batteries that are coming on board in the next few years. I found out since that Tesla is putting it off until 25. So is Toyota, because it's a new technology. They want it to be mature a little more before they put all the money into it. So it's going to be a few years. There's others that are jumping on board right away, and they're going to be changing. That's just one thing. We look at another and we see pollution as a big problem. And you look at the oceans, the plastics in the oceans, and what's happened there. It's killing fish, it's killing plankton, all through the food chain. It's affecting humans because of it. So what can we do about it? Well, right here in Everett, for the last 2.5 weeks, I go by every day 2 or 3 times underneath, right across the street from Cascade High School. There's the bridge on the Boeing Freeway. And there's been a guy laying across the sidewalk, and he started off there 2.5 weeks ago. He's always there, and he made a very small footprint. In 2.5 weeks, garbage is spread out away from him. No one's picking up the garbage. No one's helping him. When we build these mini houses and put them up, that's a good thing to get them off the streets and help them. But are we just building another ghetto? Are we actually solving the problems or just moving it?
So as far as this is another class by itself. It's the housing crisis, but we know
it all draws into climate change.
Correct. Absolutely.
Life.
And so I read studies on, taking, there was a report on, I think it was in New York City, and they've been doing this for a long time, where they have the shelters. Obviously, if it's 0 degrees outside, you can't be outside. You got to go into a shelter. But then there's the issue that, by 8 a.m. you need to be out of the building, and then there's a curfew when you can come back in. There's a time limit, and it doesn't really solve the problem. I saw a video on this lady. She's been doing that lifestyle for over 10 years, and a reporter saw her when she started this program, and then 10 years later, still doing the same thing. Nothing's changed. One thing I think Finland actually is doing is that they're focusing on folks getting a home. You talked about these tiny homes. If you have something that belongs to you, you have, you build your self-esteem, you can get out of your situation with resources as well, government resources as well. I'm not saying you can do it all by yourself, by no means, but
at Housing Hope.
Yeah.
The whole education system they have is phenomenal. It teaches people how to care for themselves, care for their houses, to build. They actually help them build them and move them in, but they have to be dedicated to it. They have to go to their university, what they call their university. And it teaches them about budgeting, about earning money and investing it, not investing for profit, but just to exist. And that, I think, is really an answer. It's got to parallel other attempts too, but that is really an answer. They've done amazing things.
Yep. Anyone else?
I'm here.
Hey, Ed. I can't see you, so I didn't know if you were raising your hand or not.
I don't even know how to see me. Okay. Who knows? I was thinking about America for so many centuries has been a North American, a European country with most of the immigrants coming from Europe. Now we have people coming from all other continents and all other languages and all other cultures. And we know that probably the white population, if I can call it that, will be in the minority eventually. And there's a lot of, I think, fear and anxiety about where does the power then go for us who have been in power for so long. So the psychological thing going on as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Apologies if you can hear my neighbor's truck is going on, if you hear that. Yeah, so, we are, this is a Christian class. We're talking about, living the life that, God presented to us and provided to us in the Bible. It's doing and not just saying we're going to fix something, but it's like the Bible verse I brought up this morning. It's loving your neighbor. Really showing that care that it's not just about you. It's about everybody, and when everybody can get into a higher level of independence and not live on the streets and not have all the major countries cause most of the pollution in the world. So we're the smaller countries, especially the ones that are in the islands and stuff. They're getting hit the hardest.
But if I'm from Haiti and I want to come to America, I might be from Trump's shithouse country. Then what happens? Can you accept?
Good thing we can't see you, Ed.
I don't know how to do that one.
So I was just going to, so the problem is not lack of resources. There's plenty of money in our country in particular, and even here. It's how we choose to spend our money. And so I'm talking basically about our tax system, because that's how publicly we do that. And your budget is reflective of your values. We're not budgeting the kind of money that reflects the degree of the problem that we have. And we're not willing to tax where the money is. I mean, we have billionaires that don't pay any taxes at all. We could easily come up with a lot of money that could build a lot of housing, that could subsidize electric cars, that could rebuild water systems. The money is there. It's just that we're not willing to make I guess it's a political choice about who we're going to tap for this. And so, I mean, it's a choice. If we choose to let our values, our budget values remain the same, we're never going to find a way to do this.
Yeah,
I'm seeing that there's a lot of different diversity of opinions, and they're all valid. And so there's no one simple answer. What you say is we have to go through the government. We also have to go through the individuals, and we have to take care of the people that are not blessed with education, a good job, and so on. We have to find a way to help them. All these things have to happen. And it's not an easy problem, but we have to work at it. It's like, people, I senior moment. With names.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, so it's, we have to step forward and do it. And that may mean writing our congressman. It might mean talking with other people, spreading your ideas. I thought that you had an article in last week's stuff you sent out that talked about how you talk to people. Don't look at the negative, have a positive approach. And this makes a big difference. Instead of getting their dander up, oh yeah, that's a good idea. You know, so it isn't easy. It's going to be hard because it's going to mean every one of us have to change a little bit or a lot. So.
Yeah. This is one thing I keep telling myself. This is just my own personal, struggles that I live with. Is, you're hit with so many things in this world. So many things that want to take the focus out of your own life, and you try to prioritize what is important. But in this case, we talked about the individual aspects that we can do, and we'll talk a little bit more about that next week on our last class with Dr. Katharine Hayhoe. But it's doing one thing at a time, and put your energy in there and get it set up and start, or get the ball rolling per se, and then go on to the next step. And that, that's what we can do individually. Then we share that method with our neighbors, and you go up the ladder.
One of the things from last week that kind of got my attention was that it was mentioned the recycling and what was happening to recycled materials. And so after that class on Monday, I called Ruben Tino, and I actually asked him a bunch of questions. And I had a very nice gal that worked in the office. And I asked a question like, okay, some people are thinking that you're not really recycling, you're just all dumping it into the dump. And she said, absolutely not. That they keep the plastics and they keep the newspapers and the cardboard separate, and they actually hire folks that are handicapped to go through the garbage and take out things that they can't recycle. So they have a group of people, and they have got people supervising them. So they're cleaning up the recycle that we send to our garbage and to Rubatino, and then they ship it to the Seattle port, and the Seattle takes it someplace, and she couldn't tell me where. But they are going through, and they are recycling, and they are using the best they can about recycling our goods, so that we can be assured that that's happening if you're having Rubentino, and probably others as well. So I got that message after talking about 20, 25 minutes with her, and she was a very nice gal.
Yeah. Thanks, Chris. That's good.
Thanks, Chris, for looking into that. That's great.
Yep.
So, yeah.
We also experimented with our laundry, not using the dryer. That was interesting.
I was thinking about you and Mark, Evie and Mark this week about that. I was like, do I use a dryer or not? Hit the dryer.
Like different stuff. You can't really notice the difference. You can hang it and dry it. But there's certain things that I kind of I did it, and I folded them all and put them on the bed, and I left them there for Chris to put away because I wanted him to look at, and didn't tell him, you know, what actually was. I put some in the dryer because, like, towels. Oh my God.
The t-shirts are crunchy.
I said, "What you think of your t-shirts?" And he goes, "Well, they were
not for."
Yeah, so it was interesting. What we've come upon, or what we've sort of decided, and he tried to figure out a way to put up some lines in our laundry room or somewhere. We literally couldn't find anywhere because to dry them takes a while, and pretty much any place he was going to try to put them, I would have to swim through them to get to something else. So we actually settled on, okay, there's some things we can hang and we can dry, and it isn't going to make a lot of difference, which then reduces the number of things you have to put in the dryer, so you can put it in for less time. So that's what we decided on. And so his t-shirts won't be like all crunched up. It was pretty interesting.
I applaud you taking that step.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, good for you.
You know, well, they put their dryer in the living room, and I'm going, well, we sit in here, and I really can't even look out the window where we'd have to put it. You know, it was just pretty funny.
Well, you know, the t-shirts aren't as crunchy the third day that you wear them.
I can tell you this. I wanted to say that because I think usually when I do the laundry, he has about 3/4 of it. And I thought, maybe you could wear those 2 days.
That's because I do all the dirty work.
Yeah.
A lot of that is just a mindset too. When I lived in Japan, I didn't have a dryer, and I had a washing machine, which was extremely manual, and we'll save that story for another time. But like the whole country hung their clothes outside to dry. My only outside space was right where the train went by, so they would just get dust blasted. So I dried all my clothes inside my little living space, and you got to the point where in your mind, you knew if something was crunchy, it was clean.
Yeah.
And we have the opposite way of thinking of that sort of stuff here. So, but I'll send you a link for our little drying rack thing.
Yeah, but you know, for all of this stuff, we're going to have to make some compromises.
Yeah.
Not everything's going to be convenient. We're going to have to work around it and learn new ways, and it's not always going to be convenient as easy, because things are easy because they're energy intensive. We have to put other energy into our mind energy, other ways of doing things.
But good for you for giving it a try.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we're at the 1 hour mark. I still have one more video, so let's start that video and we'll finish off before noon. All right. Go ahead and mute yourself as well.
Climate change, that's one of those environmental issues. It's fine for people who eat granola for breakfast and wear Birkenstocks year-round, but it's just not something that someone like me would care about, right? One of the greatest challenges that we face is the fact that climate change has been labeled as an environmental issue. And when we say the word environmental, people have this immediate mental image of someone who hugs trees, scolds others for not recycling, and always votes green, if they vote at all. The reality, though, is that climate change is a human issue. And last I checked, most of us are human. It's also an economic issue, a humanitarian issue, an issue of national security, and the management of our natural resources. And yes, of course it's an environmental issue too, because it affects our environment. But what is our environment? It's our home, planet Earth, the only home we have. The other summer, I was speaking at a science festival in Norway, where I had the honor of watching Stephen Hawking give one of his final talks. As you may know, he was outspoken about the dangers that climate change poses to human civilization as we know it. But in speaking of those dangers, he said something that shocked me profoundly. To escape from climate change, he said, we may have to terraform Mars. What? I thought as I nearly leaped out of my chair. There's no way. If we don't fix climate change now, the impacts on human society will be so widespread and so devastating that we'll be incapable of terraforming Mars, let alone populating it with any significant number of people. So the next day, when I was waiting backstage before my own talk, I found myself in the company of Lord Martin Rees, who is the Royal Astronomer of England. He is also a longtime friend and colleague of Hawking's. So I took the opportunity to ask him, do you agree with what Hawking said? I will never forget his answer. Oh no, he replied, shaking his head. Fixing climate change is a dawdle in the park compared to terraforming Mars. I know people who are excited about going to Mars, and I wish them well. But space exploration will not solve the problem of climate change. That's because the planet that we already have is our perfect home. We don't often think about the fact that every resource we have and use comes from the Earth. How long would we last without air to breathe, water to drink, food to eat? And that's not all. The materials we use to build our homes and our infrastructure, to make the clothes and the goods we use, including the phone or the computer or even the TV that you're using right now to watch this video, every piece of that came from the resources provided by our planet. That's why to care about a changing climate, we don't have to be someone who considers themselves an environmentalist, although it certainly helps. We just have to be a human who wants this planet, the only one we currently have and are likely to have for a very long time, to continue to be a safe home for us all. And it isn't about moving climate change up our priority lists, as if it's currently at number 21 and we need to move it up to 8 or maybe even 3. No, I don't think climate change needs to be on our priority list at all. The only reason we care about it is because it already affects everything else that matters to us today. Just think about it. There are more than 7.5 billion of us on this planet, and we have built our cities and our countries and our socioeconomic systems on the assumption that climate is stable and that the conditions that we've experienced in the past paint an accurate picture of the future. Today, though, that assumption is no longer true. The Earth's climate is changing faster than any time in the history of human civilization. Why does that matter? If we value the places where we live, which for hundreds of millions of us are in areas that are already at risk due to sea level rise or stronger storms or both, if we care about climate change because it impacts the food we eat, where we grow it, how much it costs, the air we breathe and how clean or dirty it is, the economy, national security, humanitarian issues like hunger and poverty and disease across the world. In short, climate change will directly impact the future of civilization as we know it. If we care about any of those things, then we are already the perfect person to care about a changing climate. Now, it's true. There are some values that are incompatible with fixing climate change. But those values are ones that put short-sightedness and greed front and center. If all we care about is our comfortable life today, or how much money we could make this year from digging up or burning fossil fuels, no matter what harm it does or what impact it has, then sure, we would not care much about climate change yet. It just doesn't make sense. But if you're a human here on Earth and you care about your family and their future, you already care about climate change. You just might not have realized it until now. By connecting the dots between what we value, what we hold dear, or even what we like to do in our spare time, whether it's skiing or birding or hunting or fishing, and how climate change will impact those things going forward, That's what gives us a genuine motivation to care, to do our part, and to hold our elected officials and our politicians and our leaders responsible to do their part too, to curb our carbon emissions before it's too late.
All right, so our final question of the day. What do you imagine is like for the poorest people in the world who are already facing the consequences of climate change on a daily basis? And go ahead and unmute yourself as well. And that's why we keep talking about this, and I keep bringing it up. We see this, we're doing all the impact, and in other countries, other smaller countries are being hit the hardest.
Yep, which is kind of the way things tend to go with our culture. And it's unfortunate, since the real perpetrators of the problem will be the last ones to feel it severely. It'll be the innocents, the people who don't understand what's going on, that'll get hit so hard. And they're saying, well, we want to live like you guys do, but they can't, because that would just make the problem that much worse. So that increases, I think, our sense of responsibility. We need to get these new techniques figured out and implement them in our countries, and also provide them for free or at a discount to these other countries, so they can begin to see a better lifestyle, but not through the traditional means, the dirty means that we've used, but through cleaner technology that we can develop.
Yep, absolutely. Go ahead, Ed.
Well, there is a crisis in Haiti currently. People are moving out of Port-au-Prince because of the unsafe conditions that are there. They're moving up into the mountains where the people are growing their crops within inverted tires. And now they're facing the fact that too many people are moving into their area, that they can't supply the food for them either. So they move, there's an immigration that's happening within the country itself.
Yeah, and that's the migration I talked about earlier, is that it's not just from country to country, but it's internally in the country, different locations. Just, it could be for economic reasons. It could be just to be able to survive. Mm-hmm. But if you start moving people into a tighter space, it affects everything, and you're gonna have, unfortunately, you're gonna have more crime, more disease. If the Earth was triple in size for the amount of people that we have, then yeah, maybe we'll be in a better situation. But we're just populating all these areas that can't sustain it, and that's what we need to build. Or when we build new stuff, is how to be in a sustainable way.
But square foot, urban environments are the most sustainable for least carbon footprint, right? Because you're sharing a lot of the resources for powering things. If you live in a dense building, some people desire that, other people don't, but that is the most efficient for reducing your carbon footprint is dense living spaces, right? And then the urban areas, you talk about just concrete jungle, there are things that are popping up, like living walls and all. And I think somebody might have mentioned this before, but Down to Earth was the Netflix show with Zac Efron. They do visit some pretty cool urban places where they're trying to reverse climate change, or at least reduce their impact by having wall gardens, right, and more plants and everything. So we're talking so broad, and when you talk about Haiti, which has got other issues and stuff, and then even and somebody mentioned how they live in Japan. Well, it's desirable to live in Tokyo, and they don't have as much land as China, right? Because they've got an island to live with and all. So I think wherever you're at, there's many different solutions for reducing your footprint. Whether you're in the rural area with spacious lands, or if you're in dense urban environment.
Yeah, absolutely.
What about Alderwood Mall?
Say again?
What about Alderwood Mall? I'm seeing all those apartment buildings going up there. Is that an answer?
Well, they're looking for light rail to come in.
Yeah, they're walking as well. Depends on what, if you're on the north end of the mall, it's a little bit, well, I'm sure there's going to be bus stops going back and forth from there to the Link station.
Okay.
For the people willing to live there, I mean, I'm not sure I'd want to live above a mall, but I don't like to get close to malls. But for those who are willing to live there, it's better to have them there than to build new subdivisions in Granite Falls and have them driving back and forth and all the stuff that would entail.
Multi-land use has been a concept that they've tried to do more in urban centers, maybe suburban it's moving out towards. I did a paper back in the mid-90s about San Diego, the San Diego Transit, which San Diego is known as a mass transit, but they've had red trains to go all the way to Tijuana, and then they work with the developers to have kind of red built into the architecture of these buildings where you could live in that area in a condo, whatever else, and then you have like these mini shopping things you can do, have it, and the term was called transit supported development. So whether it's density or the urban side of things, it's good, but they had a lot of other interesting concepts they looked at. For example, making places more walkable. Two concepts I do remember is having trees as medians or lots of vegetation, so cars, so people slow down, and then having a parking lot not right as you turn into like a retail location, but having it far off. So actually have your retail location right next to the sidewalk, so it makes it more walking friendly, and people drive slower too and they have to park further away, but you want it to be very walking friendly to do that. So those are just concepts that are out there that don't happen everywhere, but they've been known for quite a while to improve urban living.
Yeah, just like we had the heat dome that we had last summer. Hopefully, we don't have again anytime soon. But if you look at, I saw on the news, it talked about how Kent and Auburn, they're in that valley area, and we go with that terminology, a concrete jungle. That temperature, there's lower cost of living, and there's less trees and vegetation to absorb all that heat. That's one thing, we can start fixing small things on a local area is to make it more green, literally more green by trees and vegetation to absorb that heat. All right, it's almost noon. Does anybody else anything else to say, or just as an announcement? Yeah, so we're having that drive-through Sunday again, like we used to have during when we were completely online. But this time we're hopefully just a short period of time. But so that the Sunday the 27th, we're gonna have that guest speaker. So I may have to push it back 15 minutes or so, but Dr. Cynthia Mo Lavada will be here and talking to us from directly. She'll be in Southern California, presenting her Pacific Lutheran University, I think it is. But if my thoughts are, just be first in line and come hustle back to Mukilteo. So get ready for the class. But if we think it's to be safe, make everyone have opportunity, because we're giving out the Ash Wednesday ash that day as well, not just pancakes, which is a good thing also, but the ashes for Ash Wednesday. So we may have to push the class a little, maybe 15 minutes back, if anybody else has any concerns about that or not.
Fine with us.
Okay. All right. So if anything else, we'll just go ahead and close in prayer. Dear Lord Jesus, thank you for this day. Thank you for giving us the grace that you provided that we do not deserve, nor do we earn. Thank you for this class. Thank you for this participation and to know that we do love one another as you have told us, but we need to stay focused and help not ourselves and our neighbors and our church, our community, and to keep talking about climate change and showing responsibility for what you've given us and being stewards of this planet. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
All right, thank guys.
Thank you.
Enjoy the Super Bowl. I'll enjoy the commercials.
Yeah, I know the commercials.
Yes.
All right, bye-bye.
Have a great week. Thank you.
Bye-bye.